Hi, welcome to the Mind Your Mind podcast. This episode is about depression and anxiety. This is part of the YAB campaign, and I'm Theodora.
I'm Livia.
And I'm Clara.
So, Clara, what's your definition of anxiety and depression?
Yeah, so depression is when the brain does not produce enough dopamine, which is the chemical that produces happiness, basically. And it often presents itself as feeling hopeless or not caring about the world or just generally feeling emotionless. And anxiety is sort of a chronic, intense sense of worry or fear. And then often presents itself as like feeling very restless and worried and kind of harried and whatnot. So that's what depression and anxiety are.
Yeah, and just because we gave one definition, there's actually multiple symptoms of depression and what can it look like, and anxiety. So do you guys want to share any stories about how it looks like for you?
I can talk a little about that. I think, like you said, I have a lot of experience with anxiety, and I think, like you said, there are a lot of different experiences. But for me, when I'm anxious, I've noticed recently that it kind of tends to come off as anger or just annoyance, just my body language. I sort of don't know how to convey that I'm anxious. I think it can present itself sometimes in ways where it might not be clear that it's always anxiety. But for me, that's how it works sometimes.
How do you navigate around that?
It's hard. And honestly, I'm not sure if I've come up with a really good plan. I haven't gotten it down yet, but I try to communicate, and sometimes it takes a while for me to cool down because my emotions are so intense, and I kind of have to have some space to sort of reconnect and sort of plan out what I need to do, and just realize that realize what I'm feeling and how to cope with it and what to do about the situation.
Yeah, so how do you recenter yourself, or how does getting the space you need look like for you?
I think going for a walk helps, being around nature helps me, and getting moving a little bit. Sometimes I don't I need someone else to push me to go outside or walk around, but whenever I do, it really helps me feel better and recenter myself.
Yeah, I really resonated with that story. I think a lot of times my anxiety is just a culmination of my overthinking, and a lot of times the way that I relieve that is by communication. And I think since we're teenagers, it's so hard to understand our feelings. There's an inundation of emotions that we experience, and it's just so hard to articulate and pinpoint. But at least for me, I know that to release it, I either communicate or go on a walk. Yeah,
I think for me, it sort of presents itself as my brain being wound too tight, which I don't know if that makes any sense. I find that a good way to relieve my sort of stress is honestly dancing. Just not organized dance or anything. I mean, sometimes yes, but just pacing around, my kitchen, just sort of dancing. I feel that really helps. Also, what Livia said, taking walks, especially just sort of being outside, moving by myself.
I think another thing that I didn't mention is listening to music, because it helps me feel really heard, especially if it's I listen to a lot of emotional deep music, I guess, and it helps me feel people understand and have shared experiences that I'm going through. So yeah,
I think it's really important for people to realize that they're not alone in anxiety and depression as well, and that these are pretty common experiences.
Yeah, I think especially like in teenagers, we tend to feel a lot more anxious in like a bigger crowd. But just know like we're all in it together.
What are some situations that can like trigger anxiety for either of you?
I know for me, like public speaking, that can definitely trigger like my anxiety because you're kind of always like self-conscious when you're talking because you know everyone's looking at you. Um, but I think the way that I brave through it is just doing it. Like I kind of look from a different perspective, like it's so that I can know that it's not that as serious as I make it out to be. So just do it. Nike. Just kidding. Not Nike. We don't. Not sponsored.
For me, I think a lot of anxiety comes from like social situations, like you said about public speaking, also about like worrying if I did something to offend someone that I'm close to or if I said the right thing. Like you were talking about overthinking earlier, and I like overthink a lot of like what I say or like how I react, like even just how like my facial expressions or I don't know, just stuff like that. Like I'm like thinking like, does this seem like normal to the person I'm talking to, or like do I seem like awkward or like I don't know what I'm doing or I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah.
I definitely feel that as well, and like I'm pretty bad at social interactions. Yeah, and so I definitely feel like, how am I coming across? Because I don't know. I'm also autistic, so that makes it. I don't want to say a lot hard. So that makes it makes social interactions pretty hard for me, especially because I can't really read people's faces to know like what they think about me. Like to this day, I kind of think that all neurotypical people are kind of lying to me about saying that they can see worry on people's faces. I don't really think that. I just kind of, in like a tiny corner of my brain, am I like, are you really just all gaslighting me? Because like, so pivoting to like depression, do any of you have like any experiences that you want to share?
Yeah, I think for me, I never got diagnosed by like a therapist for depression. But like just hearing kind of different stories about people's depression, I feel like I resonated with that. Just hearing like stories and like other campaigns like YAB spreading like awareness about depression, I kind of was able to resonate with the stories that were being shared. Last year, my sophomore year, I had a lot of academic stress. Y'all can probably relate. And it wasn't, my depression didn't manifest in a way where I was like in bed all day or I was like, I couldn't function. I was still able to do regular things, but I was just like really sad like the whole time. And it's something I had to confront because it was just like not sustainable to like always go through every day feeling the same, even if you can do the same activities.
Have you heard of high functioning depression before? I don't know a lot about it myself, but it sounds like it might be kind of similar.
I have heard about it on social media, and I just like got the definition verified through a therapist. I think my case, it was high functioning depression because I was able to do like regular activities, but I was still experiencing like other symptoms of depression, like emotionally, and it wasn't really manifested physically, if that makes sense.
I also have struggled with depression for a lot of my life, and I think it used to be like really severe, and I do talk about that in the episode about suicidal ideation and self-harm, which you should all check out. But now it's just sort of like, you know, sometimes it just feels sort of like emotionless or, you know, not motivated to do anything. It's another sort of case of high functioning depression, which is when somebody acts like quote unquote normal in public, and they might be hanging out with friends and doing work or school or whatnot, but like they in private sort of feel very run down. Maybe those social interactions wear them out more than they used to. And just like a lack of motivation for other things like, hygiene or, other like hygiene or just like feeling taking care of yourself. Yeah, taking care of oneself, or just generally like doing all those things, but having the experience of it being very hard to do so, like mentally.
So what's the difference between like depression and sadness?
That's a really good question, and I think it's a question that not a lot of people know the answer to. And so I am going to paraphrase a quote from The Bean Trees by Barbara Kingsolver. Again, paraphrasing. I haven't read this book for a couple of years. I do not have it with me. Okay, I'm sorry if I don't get it correct, but this is the gist of it. Is that they said that sadness is like a cold. Like, you have it for a couple hours or a weekend or whatever, and then it's sort of over. You're just sort of done with it. Whereas, like, depression is like cancer. Like, it's chronic, it lasts a long time. And a thing that I don't see a lot of people talking about is that recovering from depression, because it is a thing that you can recover from, or just dealing with it, as a chronic illness, is a battle. Like, it is, I do battle my depression. I am in therapy and I take medication, and I have to remind myself to brush my teeth and do other stuff like that. Or, so like that's a really good question. Do you guys think that this sort of, that explaining depression and anxiety and the difference and how it's different from sadness and all these things, have you guys had any experience like trying to explain that to adults or family members and having difficulty with that?
Yeah, I think for me, since for my case, I think it was high functioning depression, because it's kind of like a mask, because it's not really manifested physically. It was hard for my parents to see the like validity of my claims that I was going through like depression. But I guess me constantly communicating with them really like showed them that what I was saying was real, because they couldn't see it. But I think that for my case, it was my parents being able to listen to me and listen to like my pleas for help, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, you got that?
Okay, this is Sabrina. She's kind of been hanging out
Hi,
in the corner.
I'm always watching. I'm going to be in a bunch of other episodes, but I didn't feel like I should take the floor for this one just because these aren't super centralized in my personal experiences. In my personal struggles, since like high functioning depression, I don't think I have depression, but I do struggle with my emotions and sometimes just feeling overwhelming sadness. And the issue is I keep going about life as normal, so my parents don't believe me. And that's why it took a really long time for me to like convince them to let me start getting therapy, because there were always more important, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see me, there were always more important things going on. So do you guys have any ideas for like how to make them believe you? It's a really hard situation.
I mean, showing them media that proves that. Like, I mean, there is this podcast episode, for instance. Share it with your family to explain depression and anxiety and prove that you're not the only one, and it's just not a random way to get attention. It's a legitimate medical disorder. It's a medical disorder, right? I can say that, can I? I can say that. I can say that. Maybe they won't, but just like being persistent, I think maybe I've kind of had to explain this a little bit to my mom because she doesn't have depression. She believes me, but like she doesn't have depression. She doesn't really understand what it would be like, She's like being persistent, showing them other media, especially like stuff from like experts. There's a ton of resources of like therapists and psychiatrists and like pediatricians and medical doctors explaining depression and being like, this is a real thing.
I think to piggyback on what you said, with like persistence, I think for me, I was always my number one advocate. So I would always speak up because I wanted to change. So like, I always supported myself if you don't have that support system. But like ways that you can go for it or like seek help, like without parental consent is like talking to your counselors or talking to your friends or like building that support system around you. But there's like definitely other ways, like you don't have to do that.
Are there any like hotlines or other like online methods of communication that could help?
Yeah, so we have an Instagram that you guys can follow, mind your mind _Cal, not CA. That's Canada. And that has like has resource information and will have more resource information on like just hotlines and resources that are free and accessible. What about you?
And then some quick ones that obviously like you can Google mental health resources, free mental health resources, mental health hotlines. If you are in Los Angeles County, I think most California counties have a mental health hotline. It's like you could Google whatever your county is or state or city and be like mental health resources. Those are good ways to find a bunch of ones. But a couple ones that I want to highlight are Teen Talk, which is an app that puts you I've never had to use it, but my understanding of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's an app and you can text teens that are trained in mental health about your experience, just if you need someone to talk to or some advice, or
And they'll offer support.
Yeah, and they'll offer support or just, a listening ear, someone to vent to, whatever. Yeah. You should also you shouldn't be afraid to be like, I saw this hotline that's like for people going through this specific situation, but I don't know if I apply, just go for it. Like, the worst thing that they can do is be like, oh, we're not really trained for this. But like, maybe they are. Maybe you do apply. Maybe that's fine. Do it. Also, the Trevor Project has some great resources.
Never hurts to reach out for support.
Yeah, it never hurts to reach out for support. You're Never a Bother, which is another California campaign. Great campaign. Also, they have some good resources, so you can look them up.
There's also a Linktree link in our Instagram where our email is on it. So if you ever want to talk to any of our team members, where there's like therapists, and just like teens like us who can really resonate with a lot of stories, you can just hit us up there.
We would be honored.
Yeah.
And sincerely, we would legitimately be honored to help you.
Or Instagram DMs.
Yeah, or
Instagram DMs.
Instagram DMs, just like whatever, getting in touch with
Comments.
Comment, just like getting in touch with us.
Like button. So
I don't think you can get in touch via a like button.
Just like our posts, if you resonate with it, of course. Also, if you don't feel like you have immediate support or it's hard for you to reach out, you could always journal. And like, I guess it's a form of talking to yourself or just like organizing your thoughts if you are experiencing like anxiety, long-term sadness, or depression. I know I journaled for a long time and it really helped me kind of not overthink a lot and also just center myself. Do you guys have any of those instances?
Yeah, I like to write poetry about stuff. Just like because I can, because I think it helps me a little bit. Like it doesn't again like this sort of art stuff, like it doesn't have to be good. Like if drawing helps you, who cares if it's a stick figure? Like just do it. It's not hard.
It's not for anyone else.
Yeah, it's not for it. You don't have to. You can show it to other people, but you don't have to. Obviously, it's your stuff. Do whatever you want. Also, another important thing I should mention is that Teen Talk, like a lot of these other helplines, like you can reach them out even if you know that you don't have a clinical diagnosis of depression or anxiety. If you know that that isn't what you're going through, if that's just like you just had a crappy day and you need someone to say, hey, you had a crappy day.
Also, I just want to send vibes of encouragement. If you're a little scared to reach out for help, it is an act of courage to make that step. So I know y'all can do it. So here's my vibes.
That's great.
Circling back to anxiety, I know a lot of us were feeling a little anxious before filming this. Let's talk about it. Like, I know, at least for me, I was feeling anxious recording because I have there's like barely any instances in my life where I have been filmed for something so public. But I kind of just did it. Like like I said before, I kind of had to put it in another perspective where I knew that a lot of my nerves are kind of a dramatized version of what I think can go wrong. So I just wanted to share my perspective on these on these things so that we can hopefully help other people.
Yeah, I think for me it was also a little nerve-wracking to be on the camera, and also just in general I worry a lot about what I say, if it will come off the right way, and whether I'm saying is like correct, I guess. But I really want to help people who might be going through similar things and who maybe might not have as much support. So I did it.
Are you glad that you did it?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for coming to our little corner of the internet. Check out our Instagram account. We have some other podcast episodes. I think by the time that this one is released, we should have had one more, and then we'll have some more coming. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Just take care of yourself.
Thanks for watching our episode and for coming with us to the end. We'll give you 3 big booms. Boom, boom, boom.